let's wrap up Anselm's Proslogion using the Thomas Williams translation. In chapter 24, we read, "Bestir yourself, O my soul, lift up your whole understanding and consider as best you can what sort of good this is, and how great it is. For if particular goods are delightful, consider intently how delightful is that good which contains the joyfulness of all goods. And not such joyfulness as we have experienced in created things, but as different from that as the Creator differs from the creature. If created life is good, how good is the life that creates, etc., etc. If there are many and great delights in delightful things, what kind and how great a delight is there in him who made those delightful things? There are wonderful things in this world. All their goodness comes from God. God is the source of all their goodness. All the goodness that is in them was in God first, and more. God is goodness itself, the infinite, the unlimited goodness. God is the greatest possible good, the sum of all goods. God is goodness itself. Chapter 25. So why are you wandering through many things, you insignificant mortal, seeking the goods of your soul and of your body? Love the one good, in which are all good things, and that is enough. Desire the simple good, which is the complete good, and that is enough. What do you love, O my flesh? What do you long for, O my soul? It is there. Whatever you love, whatever you long for, it is there. All good things we desire, physical or spiritual. Simple example, I desire this good tea and the peanuts, and I desire the knowledge I might be able to find in those books, but all the goodness of all the good things I desire, physically or spiritually, all that goodness is in God, the perfect good, the complete good, the simple good without parts, the simple good which is unified whole of goodness itself. And Anselm goes over a list of things that we desire and explains how the original goodness in that thing is in God. If it is beauty that delights you, the righteous will shine like the sun. You'll quote scripture, I think, for each of these. If it is swiftness or strength or the freedom of a body that nothing can withstand, they will be like the angels of God. You know what, let's rewind just a bit. At the beginning of this chapter, he says, of those who enjoy this good, what will be theirs and what will not be theirs? Just to put this in context. He's talking about, actually, I think he's talking about heaven. He's talking about the perfect enjoyment of God. What sort of joy is available to those who enjoy God? Why are you wandering through many things, you insignificant mortal, seeking the goods of your body and of your soul? Love the one good, in which are all good things, and that is enough. Desire the simple good, which is the complete good, and that is enough. What do you love or desire? My flesh, my soul, whatever goodness you desire in any particular thing, all that goodness is in God, the one good thing. God, the whole, the simple, complete goodness. And then he goes over this... He does this exercise of going over these things. If it is beauty that delights you, there, in the community of them that enjoy God perfectly, the righteous will shine like the sun. If it is swiftness or strength or the freedom of a body that nothing can withstand, if that's what you desire, they will be like the angels of God, etc., etc. If it is a long and healthy life that you desire, there, the perfect enjoyment of God is a healthy eternity and eternal health, for the righteous will live forever, and etc., etc. If it is satisfaction you desire, they will be satisfied when the glory of God has appeared. If it is drunkenness, they will be drunk with the abundance of the house of God. If it's music, if it is some pleasure, actually on music he does not quote scripture. If it is music, they are the choirs of angels sing unceasingly to God. If it is some pleasure, not impure but pure, God will give them to drink from the torrent of his pleasure. If it is wisdom, if it is friendship, actually wisdom doesn't have a Bible quote either. If it is wisdom, the very wisdom of God will show itself to them. If it is friendship, they will love God more than themselves, and one another as themselves, and God will love them more than they do themselves, for they will love God in themselves, and one another through God, and God will love himself and them through himself. If it is concord, if it is power, if it is wealth and honor, etc., etc., whatever you desire, you will find a complete enjoyment of that there. in the heavenly enjoyment of the goodness of God. If it is true security, they will be certain that they will never in any way lose the security, or rather this good, just as certain as they are that they will never give it up voluntarily, and that the loving God will never take it away against their will from those who love him. If you desire a stable happiness, which is the quest of many philosophers from the ancient and medieval world, the Stoics were desiring a stable happiness, for example. How do you achieve a stable happiness? Love God. This is the standard Augustinian answer, going back to at least as early as Augustine's De Beata Vita on the happy life. The loving God will never take it away against their will, from those who love him, and that nothing more powerful than God will separate them from God against their will. Let's rewind to that passage on friendship. If it's friendship you desire, he explains that the multi-directional love of multiple people who love God, where they love God and they love themselves in God, and they love, well, each one of them loves, I think you're loving yourself and others. So you're loving yourself, others, and God. And you're loving God and oneself and one another through God. You love God through God. You love yourself through God. You love others through God. And God is loving himself and them through himself. There's a lot of love going on. He's describing the perfect community of people who perfectly enjoy the perfect goodness of God. You don't have to choose between loving God and others. You don't have to choose between loving yourself and others. You don't have to choose between loving yourself and God. In the perfect enjoyment of God, whose goodness is infinite and able to satisfy all our longings, in the perfect enjoyment of God, we find our own fulfillment. So that's how we love ourselves, by loving God. And we find the love of others. That's how we love others, by loving God. Because what's my fulfillment that's different from yours? Let me rephrase that. How would your fulfillment be different from mine, or my fulfillment be different from yours? The fulfillment of the human soul is to enjoy the goodness of God. So, to do so together is to love one another. And you don't choose between loving yourself and loving someone else and loving God. The harmonious love of God is the love that combines the good of myself, the good of others, all in the enjoyment of God. I would say the good of God, but God is his own good. God is the complete good. God is the source of all goodness. God doesn't need good from us. No, what God gives to us is pure love. It's not like God's getting anything out of this, except perhaps ultimately the enjoyment of himself. What God has for us is pure gift from God to us. We are getting something out of it more than God is getting out of it. God's just getting the enjoyment of his own goodness. We are getting the enjoyment of the goodness of God. We are receiving a great gift from God's grace here. Okay, so love of God, love of neighbor, love of oneself, all harmonized. Okay, now back down further. We're in, anyone's lost track of where we are, we're in chapter 25. If you by any chance have the Thomas Williams translation that I'm using here, we're on page 23. The paragraph that begins about 60% down on page 23. What great joy is there where so great a good is present? And yet surely if someone else whom you loved in every respect as yourself had that same happiness, your joy would be doubled, for you would receive no less for him than for yourself. Again, love of oneself, love of others, and love of God all come together and complete each other. If 2 or 3 or many more had that same happiness, you would rejoice as much for each of them as you would for yourself, if you loved each one as yourself. Therefore, in that perfect charity of countless happy angels and human beings, where no one will love anyone else less than he loves himself, each one will rejoice for each of the others just as he does for himself. If indeed, since the more one loves someone, the more one rejoices in his good, it follows that just as everyone in that perfect happiness will love God incomparably more than himself and all others with him, so everyone will rejoice inconceivably more in God's happiness than in his own or in that of everyone else with him, which is what makes us truly happy. In rejoicing more in the very happiness of God than in our own happiness, we will be as happy as we can be. Skipping some, chapter 26, he speaks of joy beyond measure. The whole of that joy will therefore not enter into those who rejoice. Instead, those who rejoice will enter wholly into that joy and get the right perspective. It's not going to be joy coming into them, coming into their minds. No, they enter into the joy of God, etc., etc. Therefore, Lord, I have not yet expressed or conceived how greatly your blessed ones will rejoice, etc. O God, I pray that I will know and love you, that I might rejoice in you. And if I cannot do so fully in this life, I pray that I might grow day by day till my joy comes to fullness, etc. So, it's true that this book is about the ontological argument, but it's also about Christian ethics. It's about the love of God and neighbor, and the love of oneself by loving neighbor, the love of neighbor by loving God, the love of God, neighbor, and oneself by loving God together, the infinite joy of people who enjoy the greatest possible being in this way. Thanks for watching. This is a wonderful book, highly recommended translation. I'm done. See you on some other video on some other philosopher some other time.